Question 1. When faced with a confined space scenario, what must the employer do prior to allowing workers to enter, assuming the space meets the OSHA definition of a permit-required confined space? A. Assign a supervisor to monitor the space externally at all times. B. Ensure only workers with more than 5 years of HVACR experience enter the space. C. Eliminate or control hazards and implement a written permit space program. D. Perform a daily toolbox talk to review general safety guidelines. Answer. Correct answer. C. Eliminate or control hazards and implement a written permit space program. Explanation. OSHA 29 CFR 1926 outlines the requirements for permit-required confined space ERCS. Before workers can enter such spaces, employers must evaluate the hazards, implement controls, and create a written permit space program. Merely assigning a supervisor or requiring experience does not satisfy OSHA's stringent procedural requirements. Toolbox talks. D. They're helpful or insufficient alone. The employer must identify hazards such as atmospheric risks, engulfment, or mechanical dangers and implement proper training, monitoring, communication systems, and retrieval methods. Violations of these steps are frequently cited during OSHA inspections. Question 2. Based on the information from recent job site evaluations, which of the following best illustrates an acceptable method for protecting HVACR workers from fall hazards when working on elevated platforms exceeding 6 feet? A. Posting warning signs about fall risks. B. Providing a full body harness and a properly anchored personal fall arrest system (FOS). C. Training workers to avoid walking near platform edges. D. Using caution tape to outline hazardous zones. Answer. Correct answer. B. Providing a full body harness and a properly anchored personal fall arrest system (FOS). Explanation. Under 29 CFR 1926.501 B. OSHA mandates fall protection for employees working at heights of 6 feet or more. A FOS includes a full body harness anchorage point and connector and is one of the most effective systems when guardrails or nets aren't feasible. Merely posting sign, offering behavioral training C, or outlining areas with tape D do not physically prevent falls and therefore do not meet OSHA standards. The hierarchy of controls also prioritizes engineering and administrative controls, but personal fall arrest systems are the last line of defense and must be used correctly. Question 3. As demonstrated by a recent incident involving technician Allen working with R400 TINA refrigerant, which of the following is the most appropriate course of action when a refrigerant leak is suspected in a confined service area without mechanical ventilation? A. Continue working while holding breath until the leak is fixed. B. Immediately evacuate the area and ventilate it before proceeding. C. Use water mist to suppress the vapor cloud temporarily. D. Apply sealant and report the leak after finishing the job. Answer. Correct answer. B. Immediately evacuate the area and ventilate it before proceeding. Explanation. According to OSHA 29 CFR 1910.1200 and guidelines in the ASHRAE Standard 15, refrigerants like R400 TINA are asphyxiants in confined spaces. If a leak occurs, the safe response is immediate evacuation and forced ventilation. Holding one's breath A, or suppressing with water C does not eliminate atmospheric risk. Applying sealant D before controlling the hazard violates the hierarchy of controls and could lead to oxygen displacement or frostbite. Workers must follow SDS protocols and use proper PPE and detection equipment. OSHA considers such an action as gross negligence in confined atmospheres. Question 4. To what extent does an HVACR trainer need to address hearing conservation if employees are working near large mechanical chillers producing average noise levels of 88 dBA during an 8-hour shift? A. No action is needed unless an employee complains. B. Only signs need to be posted near noisy equipment. C. A hearing conservation program must be implemented. D. Rotate workers more frequently to avoid paperwork. Answer. Correct answer. C. A hearing conservation program must be implemented. Explanation. Per OSHA's 29 CFR 1910.95, when noise exposure exceeds 85 dBA averaged over 8 hours action level, hearing conservation program is mandatory. This includes audiometric testing, hearing protection, training, and monitoring. passive measures, B, or reactive behavior, A, D, fail to meet regulatory requirements. The goal is to prevent noise-induced hearing loss. NIL, which is irreversible, engineering controls, administrative adjustments, and PPE are all part of compliance, but documentation and consistent exposure tracking are key for OSHA auditors. Question 5. Given the circumstances of a multi-employer HVACR project site, which employer is potentially liable under OSHA's multi-employer citation policy if subcontractors' workers are exposed to unguarded rotating fan blades? A. Only the subcontractor employing the exposed workers. B. The general contractor who controls the overall site. C. Only the equipment manufacturer. D. No employer unless an incident occurs. Answer. Correct answer. B. The general contractor who controls the overall site. Explanation. OSHA's multi-employer citation policy CPL 02-00124 defines 4 roles: creating, exposing, correcting, and controlling employers. Controlling employer, often the general contractor, is responsible for ensuring compliance even if their own employees are not exposed. Liability is not limited to the direct employer. A. OSHA doesn't defer blame to manufacturers. C. Proactive enforcement is required regardless of whether an incident has occurred. D. Understanding these relationships is essential for HVACR trainers overseeing subcontracted crews. Question 6. During the process of performing a core cleaning task in a poorly ventilated rooftop unit, technician Priya notices strong chemical odors from the detergent used. What must be ensured under OSHA's respiratory protection standard before assigning her the task again? A. That she brings her own mask from home. B. That she completes a medical evaluation and fit test for an appropriate respirator. C. That she takes a break every hour for fresh air. D. That another technician supervises her. Answer. Correct answer. B. That she completes a medical evaluation and fit test for an appropriate respirator. Explanation. Under 29 CFR 1910.134, employers must provide proper respirators, medical evaluations, fit testing, and training when respiratory protection is necessary due to hazardous exposures. Allowing use of personal EPEA is non-compliant. Fresh air breaks. C. Or observation. D. Eliminate or mitigate exposure. Proper PPE selection must also be based on SDS information. For cleaning agents with potential volatile organic compounds, VOX air purifying respirators with chemical cartridges may be required. OSHA mandates full compliance before exposure. Question 7. Which of the following best reflects the employer's responsibility regarding PPE or HVACR workers exposed to chemical burns from cleaning agents and sharp edges on sheet metal ducts? A. Only supply gloves if the worker requests them. B. Train workers on proper use and require the use of PPE. C. Let workers decide which PPE is comfortable for them. D. Provide PPE for chemical hazards only, not mechanical hazards. Answer. Correct answer. B. Train workers on proper use and require the use of PPE. Explanation. OSHA's PPE standard 29 CFR 1926.28 and 1910 subpart I requires employers to assess hazards, provide PPE, train employees, and enforce proper usage. Employers cannot delegate responsibility to workers. A. C. Hazards such as chemical burns and lacerations require multi-risk protective gloves. Ignoring mechanical hazards. D. Contradicts OSHA's hazard assessment requirement. Inadequate PPE policies are often cited as willful violations. Question 8. While examining duct installation in a narrow mechanical chase, technician Jorge gets trapped between a scissor lift and a structural beam. What concept should have been addressed in the job hazard analysis JHA to prevent this incident? A. Avoiding work near overhead cranes. B. Providing reflective vests for visibility. C. Limiting access to pinch point areas. D. Marking walkways with caution tape. Answer. Correct answer. C. Limiting access to pinch point areas. Explanation. Caught in between hazards, as outlined in OSHA's Fatal 4, 29 CFR 1926 subpart N and O include pinch points created by equipment or structures. The JHA must assess potential entrapment zones and restrict access or modify work sequences accordingly. Overhead cranes A. or vests. B. Don't address entrapment. Caution tape D. is ineffective unless access is physically restricted. This underscores the importance of engineering controls and pre-task planning. Question 9. From a practical standpoint, what instructional strategy would most enhance retention among adult HVACR workers learning about heat stress prevention for the first time? A. Reading the OSHA regulation out loud in class. B. Providing a live demonstration of proper hydration and breaks. C. Handing out printed rules and asking for a summary. D. Asking learners to memorize the heat index chart. Answer. Correct answer. B. Providing a live demonstration of proper hydration and breaks. Explanation. Based on adult learning principles, andragogy, adults retain information better through practical, relevant, and experiential learning. OSHA emphasizes training that engages the learner. Refer to OSHA 2254. Demonstrations. B. Leverage visual and kinesthetic learning styles, reinforcing the behaviors that prevent heat illness. Passive approaches. A. C. D. Fail to provide context or real-world application. HVACR trainers must align with OSHA's focus on effective knowledge transfer and risk prevention. Question 10. Among the various safety data interpretations, what is the most critical first step a worker must take when encountering a new chemical agent on site during HVACR system cleaning? They ask a coworker if it's safe to use. B. Look for pictograms on the label and verify with the SDS. C. Assume it's safe if it smells normal. D. Proceed if the supervisor gave verbal approval. Answer. Correct answer. B. Look for pictograms on the label and verify with the SDS. Explanation. Under OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard 29 CFR 1910.1200 and the Globally Harmonized System (GHS), workers must review labels and safety data sheets (SDS) before exposure. Pictograms indicate hazard class, flammable, irritant, corrosive, etc., relying on sensory judgment. C. Or unverif. Verbal approval. D. Is dangerous and non-compliant. Proper hazard communication ensures workers can identify and respond to risks before they occur. Question 11. Through careful analysis of a worksite incident involving refrigerant exposure, it was discovered that Mr. Eldridge, an HVACR technician, unknowingly worked near a leaking high-pressure refrigerant line in an enclosed mechanical room. He experienced dizziness and shortness of breath, but was unaware of the hazard until the evacuation alarm was triggered. What critical safety process had most likely failed in this situation? A. Inadequate PPE compliance by Mr. Eldridge. B. Failure to perform hazard communication training specific to refrigerants. C. Improper ladder safety protocols during equipment maintenance. D. Lack of physical barriers around energized equipment. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. This scenario reflects a breakdown in the hazard communication HAZCOM process. Under OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard 29 CFR 1910.1200, employers must ensure that employees are trained on the chemical hazards in their workplace, including proper identification, use of safety data sheets (SDS), and appropriate emergency response. Mr. Eldridge's unawareness of the refrigerant leak indicates failure to communicate the chemical hazards adequately. Options A, C, and D may be important, but are not central to the root cause in this case. Question 12. In the context of OSHA's confined space regulations, Tran is assigned to inspect air ducts located above a commercial kitchen. These ducts are narrow, poorly ventilated, and require her to enter through a small panel. Her supervisor decides no entry permit is needed, citing past experiences. What is the most accurate interpretation of the OSHA standard regarding this decision? A. The space is considered non-permit required since it's part of routine HVAC inspection. B. An entry permit is only needed if the worker stays inside for more than 30 minutes. C. OSHA requires a confined space evaluation and possibly a permit if potential hazards exist. D. The need for a permit is waived if a rescue team is on standby. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. OSHA's 29 CFR 1926 subpart confined spaces in construction mandates that employers identify and evaluate confined spaces before entry. Space with limited entry-exit, not designed for continuous occupancy, and potential atmospheric hazards is classified as permit-required confined space. The supervisor's past experiences cannot substitute for regulatory evaluation. Absence of ventilation and the nature of the space require formal hazard assessment and likely permit. A, B, and D misrepresent OSHA's intent to prioritize proactive evaluation over assumptions. Question 13. When considering OSHA record-keeping requirements, an HVACR contractor working at a large commercial job site reported that a technician suffered from heat exhaustion, received fluids aerosol at the job site, and returned to work the next day. How should this incident be handled under OSHA's record-keeping standard? A. It is not recordable since the worker returned to duty the next day. B. It must be recorded because it involved medical treatment beyond first aid. C. It is recordable only if the technician is hospitalized. D. It qualifies as near miss and should be filed under hazard identification. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Under OSHA's record-keeping standard 29 CFR 1904, injuries requiring medical treatment beyond first aid, such as intravenous fluids, must be recorded regardless of whether the worker returns the next day. The treatment clearly goes beyond first aid, making the incident recordable. Options A and C misapply the criteria, and D incorrectly classifies the event. OSHA emphasizes proper tracking to recognize workplace safety trends and intervene early. Question 14. A critical examination of fall protection measures on an HVAC installation project shows that Mr. Gomez, a journeyman installer, routinely walks along a 9-foot-high unprotected beam to access a rooftop unit the employer has not provided a harness system, arguing that it's temporary work, which OSHA rule most directly applies to this situation. A. Fall protection is only required at heights above 15 feet. B. Employers must assess fall hazards but may defer protection under temporary work clauses. C. Fall protection is required at 6 feet or more in construction, regardless of task duration. D. Workers may waive fall protection if no incidents have occurred in the past year. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. OSHA 29 CFR 1926.501 states that fall protection is required in construction for work performed at elevations of 6 feet or more. The temporary work argument is invalid under OSHA's rules. The employer's failure to provide fall protection is clear violation regardless of how brief the task is. Options A, B, and D represent common misconceptions and have no basis in the standard. Question 15. From a historical standpoint, the use of asbestos in HVAC insulation remains a critical safety concern during building renovations. During a duct removal project, Daniels suspects the white wrapping on the ducts contains asbestos. What should be her immediate action based on OSHA regulations? A. Proceed with removal using a respirator and gloves. B. Contact a certified asbestos inspector before any disturbance. C. Wet the material and continue removal with caution. D. Assume it's safe if the material is not friable. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Under OSHA's asbestos standard for construction 29 CFR 1926.1101, any material suspected of containing asbestos must be evaluated by certified inspector before disturbance. Disturbing asbestos-containing material without proper identification and controls may release dangerous fibers. Option B reflects regulatory compliance. Options A, C, and D could result in unintentional exposure and violate federal standards. Question 16. Based on the information provided during an OSHA audit, a trainer observes that several apprentices regularly lift HVAC compressors without using mechanical aids or team lifting. Some report low back strain. Which strategy best aligns with OSHA's principles of ergonomics? A. Posting lifting limits on job site walls. B. Mandating physical fitness programs for all workers. C. Providing lifting training and mechanical assistance for heavy loads. D. Allowing workers to determine their own lifting methods. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. OSHA's ergonomics principles, though not covered by specific standard, emphasize designing tasks to fit workers' capabilities. Mechanical aids, such as hoists and training, reduce the risk of musculoskeletal disorders. Option C is the proactive, risk-reducing choice. posting limits. A is passive, B is outside OSHA's jurisdiction, and D ignores structured hazard control principles. Question 17. Under the assumption that a construction site is generating airborne silica dust from concrete cutting near HVAC chases, what is the most effective control method according to OSHA's hierarchy of controls? A. Rotating workers frequently to limit exposure. B. Providing half-mask respirators only. C. Using wet methods and dust collection systems during cutting. D. Increasing the job site's air conditioning. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. According to OSHA's Respirable Crystalline Silica Standard 29 CFR 1926.1153, engineering controls like wet methods and local exhaust ventilation must be used to minimize airborne dust. PPE, like respirators, is only secondary measure. Administrative controls like worker rotation are less effective. Option C aligns with the hierarchy of controls. Eliminate substitute engineer administer PPE. Question 18. Demonstrated by training observations, Istico, a newly hired HVAC technician, fails to recognize the meaning of GHS pictograms on chemical labels. What is the employer's responsibility in this situation? A. Provide only written instructions in the technician's native language. B. Immediately remove the technician from chemical handling tasks. C. Deliver comprehensive hazard communication training including GHS labeling. D. Post OSDS eats in visible areas and leave interpretation to workers. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard 29 CFR 1910.1200 requires employers to provide effective training on the GHS system, including pictograms, label elements, and SDS-IDG. Training must be understandable and appropriate to the worker's education level. Simply posting SDS or removing the worker options A, B, D does not fulfill the employer's obligation. Question 19. When evaluating the merits of OSHA-required inspections, Ista Patel, an HVAC foreman, skipped scaffold inspection at the start of a 10-hour shift, assuming it was checked the previous evening. What key regulation is being ignored in this scenario? A. Scaffolds need only be inspected weekly. B. Daily inspections are required by a competent person before each shift. C. Inspection is optional if scaffold is under 10 feet. D. Responsibility lies with the scaffold erector, not the user. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA Standard 29 CFR 1926.451 F3 mandates that scaffolds be inspected by a competent person before each work shift. Skipping the inspection increases the risk of undetected damage or instability. Option A underestimates inspection frequency. C and D are incorrect. Inspection is based on use, not just height, and is the responsibility of competent person regardless of who erected it. Question 20. In light of recent developments, an HVAC instructor wants to assess whether learners understood a training session on lockout-to-go LOTO procedures. What method best aligns with OSHA's expectations for verifying LOTO training effectiveness? A. Providing written acknowledgement form. B. Observing workers performing LOTO tasks in real time. C. Emailing PowerPoint summary post-training. D. Including multiple choice quiz without follow-up. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA 29 CFR 1910.147 C7 requires employers to verify that authorized employees understand LOTO procedures. Observation of real-time application is a practical and effective assessment tool. Merely providing documentation, A. Passive review, C. Or quizzes without hands-on evaluation, D. Do not meet the intent of ensuring comprehension and application of procedures. Question 21. During a renovation of a historical building, Mr. Alvarez, an HVAC technician, begins cutting into ductwork using a reciprocating saw. The duct is coated in old lead-based paint. What is OSHA's required action before disturbing the material? A. Apply sealant to the painted surface to prevent lead exposure. B. Proceed only if the worker wears half-mask respirator. C. Conduct an exposure assessment and implement lead-safe work practices. D. Request written permission from the building owner before disturbing the paint. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Per OSHA's lead standard in construction, 29 CFR 1926.62, an initial exposure assessment is required before any work that may disturb lead-based paint. Employers must use engineering controls, respirators if necessary, and ensure worker training on lead hazards. Options A, B, and D are not substitutes for the mandatory assessment and safe work protocols. Question 22. A mechanical room lacks permanent lighting. An HVAC technician is using a portable halogen light while replacing a blower motor. What OSHA-compliant safety concern does this situation raise? A. Halogen lights can be used if secured properly. B. Temporary lighting is acceptable if rated below 100 watts. C. Halogen lights present fire and burn hazards in enclosed spaces. D. OSHA requires only natural daylight during HVAC work. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. OSHA recognizes halogen work lighters a burn and fire hazard, especially in confined or enclosed spaces. They can ignite nearby combustibles or overheat. Safer options like LED or explosion-proof lighting are preferred. See OSHA Electrical Safety 29 CFR 1926 subpart K. Option D is incorrect. OSHA does not permit natural daylight as sole light source in enclosed areas. Question 23. An HVAC instructor notices that several students improperly store their tool bags at the top of extension ladders during mock installations. Which OSHA standard applies in correcting this unsafe practice? A. Tools must be tied off using lanyards when working on a ladder. B. Ladder tops must never be used to support any object or tool. C. Ladder rails may be used for tool storage if balanced. D. OSHA allows tool bags at the top of ladders for tasks under 15 minutes. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. According to OSHA 29 CFR 1926.1053 B13, the top or top step of a ladder must never be used to support tools or as a working platform unless specifically designed for that purpose. Option B reflects the standard clearly. A, C, and D introduce unsafe or incorrect interpretations of ladder use policy. Question 24. While reviewing HVAC training content, a trainee incorrectly states that GFCI protection is only required outdoors. What is the accurate OSHA requirement regarding GFCI on construction sites? A. GFCI is only required when water is present. B. GFCI is mandatory for all temporary wiring on construction sites. C. GFCI optional if double insulated tools are used. D. GFCI is required only during wet weather operations. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Under 29 CFR 1926.404 B1, OSHA requires GFCI protection for all 120-volt single-phase 15 and 20 amp outlets on construction sites used for temporary power. This includes both indoor and outdoor use, regardless of tool type or weather. Using double insulated tools, C, does not eliminate the GFCI requirement. Question 25. On a job site, an HVAC team is using a diesel-powered generator in a poorly ventilated basement to run vacuum pumps. One worker collapses from suspected carbon monoxide poisoning. What was the critical failure in OSHA compliance? A. The generator was not bonded to ground. B. Diesel engines are not allowed in basements under any circumstances. C. The team failed to monitor air quality or ensure ventilation. D. Only battery-powered tools should be used in HVAC work. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. OSHA 29 CFR 1926.57 and 1910.134 emphasizes adequate ventilation and atmospheric monitoring when internal combustion engines are used indoors. Carbon monoxide, CO, is a colorless, odorless hazard, and failure to ventilate the area or monitor CO levels can lead to fatal exposure. The problem here is the lack of ventilation monitoring, not necessarily the use of a diesel generator. Question 26. A senior technician claims hearing protection isn't needed during rooftop HVAC work because it's outside. Sound measurements consistently exceed 90 dBA. Which OSHA response is most appropriate? A. Hearing protection is required only in enclosed spaces. B. If exposure exceeds 85 dBA over 8 hours, hearing conservation program is required. C. Hearing protection is required only when noise is constant. D. OSHA doesn't regulate noise exposure in construction. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA's Occupational Noise Exposure Standard 29 CFR 1926.52 mandates that exposures above 85 dBA averaged over an 8-hour shift require hearing conservation program, including training and protective equipment. This applies regardless of indoor-outdoor conditions. Option B reflects this. The idea that outdoor work is exempt is common but incorrect belief. Question 27. On a school retrofit project, HVAC apprentices must access ductwork above a drop ceiling. They begin walking along ceiling grids for support. Or should a competent person instruct them to do A. Walk carefully and distribute weight evenly. B. Use a stepladder or mobile scaffold to access the ceiling area safely. C. It's acceptable if the grid was recently reinforced. D. Only supervisors are allowed to enter drop ceiling spaces. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Drop ceilings are not designed to support human weight. OSHA requires that workers use proper access equipment, such as ladders or scaffolds, to reach overhead spaces. 29 CFR 1926 subpart L. Walking on ceiling grids poses fall and collapse hazards. Option B reflects OSHA compliant access methods. Question 20. Form and instruct HVAC workers to lift 200 lb air handlers into place manually to save time. Which OSHA principle best addresses this unsafe directive? A. Workers must be physically evaluated before lifting heavy equipment. B. Hoisting or mechanical lifting device must be used to prevent musculoskeletal injury. C. OSHA allows manual lifting up to 250 pounds with team effort. D. Supervisory directives override safe lifting policies in emergencies. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA requires employers to protect workers from musculoskeletal disorders (MSDS) through engineering controls like material handling equipment. Lifting 200 pounds manually violates basic ergonomic principles and may cause injury. There is no specific OSHA weight limit, but guidance from NIOSH and industry best practices make such lifting unacceptable. Option B is the most aligned with safe practice. Question 29. During a toolbox talk, an HVAC instructor discusses EPEs but forgets to mention eye protection. A technician later suffers a corneal abrasion from flying insulation debris. What is the employer's responsibility according to OSHA? A. File report only if the injury leads to hospitalization. B. Retrain the instructor and suspend the technician. C. Ensure hazard-specific EPE training is provided before work begins. D. Submit near-miss report and close the case. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Per OSHA 29 CFR 1910.132 and 1910.133, employers must ensure PPE training is hazard-specific and completed before exposure occurs. Failing to cover eye protection before known debris-generating tasks is a serious oversight. Option C reflects the employer's regulatory obligation. A, B, and D misrepresent the priority of pre-task training. Question 30. A review of an HVAC job site finds that compressed gas cylinders are stored horizontally on a scaffold walkway. What OSHA violation is this most closely associated with? A. Cylinders must be chained or secured in a vertical position. B. Cylinders may lie horizontally only if the valve is removed. C. Scaffold storage is acceptable if space is limited. D. Cylinders can be unsecured if usage is imminent. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Per OSHA 29 CFR 1926.350A, 1. Compressed gas cylinders must be stored upright and secured to prevent falling. Storing them horizontally is dangerous and can result in leaks or explosions. Option A reflects clear OSHA protocol. The other options are unsafe and non-compliant.